Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we help everybody find high-value, hi-fi home theater and headphone equipment. And today, it's very exciting. Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200. It's a DAC. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200. The DAC Magic 200 from Cambridge Audio. First, they need to get all sorts of points for how they named it. No silly model numbers for Cambridge Audio. No, it's the DAC Magic 200. I find that to be very refreshing. Not only that, but it's a DAC from somebody that doesn't live in Asia. There's nothing wrong with Asian DACs or Chinese DACs. I love them. Frankly, I'm comparing it to one. I think they're great. But there's not a lot of DACs that come out of traditional veteran audio companies like Cambridge Audio. Look at it. Look how pretty it is. It's got a knob in the front and all sorts of LEDs and push buttons and stuff. And then it says, whoops, wrong side. Cambridge Audio right there. Yeah, let's talk about what's on the front. Let's talk about some features. Maybe they're going to be benefits for you. I don't know. On the left, there's a power button. It's got an LED in it. Lights up. One light when it's plugged in, and then another light when you turn it on. Next to that is the source button. You have multiple sources. So you have a USB, you have an optical, two opticals, two coaxials, and Bluetooth. Bluetooth is aptX, Bluetooth 4.2. The 4.2, none of that really matters. It's really the codec. Anyway, it's aptX, which is okay. Bluetooth, better than average. Then next to that, you have the volume knob. Next to that, 3 roll-off modes: fast, slow, and short delay. And you can toggle through them. And you know what? They actually make a difference. There are many DACs that have many different settings, sometimes 6 roll-offs and 10 different sound color modes. So there's 60 different combinations. I don't know if that's right. Sometimes I'm not good at math. However, there are only 3 roll-off modes on this one, and I actually heard a difference when I toggled through them. It's good. There's actually a difference. So if you buy this, you can toggle through them and then leave it on the one that you like the most. Or I've actually heard of people preferring a specific type of music for a specific type of roll-off. I'm not going to tell you which one I use because it's up to you. Next to that, you have a whole bunch of LEDs. The first one is MQA, and depending upon what sample rate of MQA is going on, it will light up a different color. And then there are a ton of sample rates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different sample rates for PCM. PCM's 2-channel. DSD, there's some stuff down there. I don't really have any DSD tracks, so I didn't try it on DSD. However, if you do, DAC Magic 200 has you covered. Finally, over on the right-hand side, you have the headphone jack. Regular, large, 1/4-inch, 6.35 millimeter headphone jack for all your headphone needs. For the critical listening comparison, I wore headphones and then plugged it into the DAC Magic 200 and then plugged it into the SMSL M500 Mark II. Those headphones were the Hi-Fi-Man Edition XS, which are fantastic headphones. They're $500, but they are probably my favorite headphone outside of the LCDX, which is very expensive, and I don't own it. They're my favorite headphones, and they're pretty revealing, so I can hear differences, and they have good bass. That doesn't really have anything to do with this video, except to say that they're really good headphones, and I really enjoy them. Hi-Fi-Man Edition XS. This video is not sponsored or affiliated in any way with the Hi-Fi-Man Edition XS. I just think it's awesome. What was I talking about? So I use my computer as a source with Tidal running in exclusive mode as the source to the source. That way it controlled everything. Tidal controlled it all. Then I also put this on my system upstairs, which I connected it to my Macintosh C15 preamplifier and a big old Macintosh vintage power amplifier to test soundstage and imaging. I used the Polk R200 speakers to test soundstage and imaging. On the back, left to right, Set of RCA single-ended outputs. Right next to that are a set of balanced outputs. That's right. The DAC Magic 200, I almost said 2000, DAC Magic 2000. That actually has a ring to it. Cambridge Audio, if you're watching, consider changing the name of the next one, DAC Magic 2000. Just add a 0. Anyway, balanced outputs next to that. Next to that, you have a digital coaxial or digital optical. That's one. Then you have another digital coaxial and digital optical. That's 2. Then next to that, a full-sized USB. And an interesting little tidbit on this, if you're getting some type of noise through the USB, you can put a ground lift on it. There's a little switch. Clicky, clicky, ground or ground lift. Only engage, according to the manual, if you're hearing noise through the USB. Next to that is where the Bluetooth aerial or antenna goes, and then that's a 12 volt DC. Comes with a little wall wart. Okay. How's it look? I think it looks really good. The front panel is a little bit larger than the rest of the enclosure. Silver, tastefully done. Looks a bit different. No digital display, which is fine, like an OLED display or anything like that. I like the LEDs. I think it's pretty cool. I have no complaints. How heavy is it? They're about the same weight. SMSL is about the same weight, okay? Sometimes they have a giant transformer, but obviously since this one has a wall wart, there's no transformer inside. It doesn't feel light. I can pick it up with 2 fingers. Maybe I could balance it with 1, but I'm not gonna try that. Overall, I think build quality is just great. Oh, price, $500. I know, that may seem like a lot, but when one considers the feature set you're getting with balanced outputs, with a headphone amp, with Bluetooth, with MQA, if you consider that a feature or a benefit, with everything you're getting in this DAC, I think it can justify the $500 price tag, because the SMSL M500 Mark II comes in almost at the exact same price with the exact same feature set. This one has a remote control. That's another thing. DAC Magic 200, no remote control. It's fine. It's fine. Do I wish I had a remote control? Of course I do, but it's fine. I don't mind it. My favorite DACs actually don't even have remote controls, and they don't have any fanciness at all. What are my favorite DACs? I'm glad you asked. The Dynafreps Aries 2 is probably my favoritist, most favoritist DAC in the world, I guess. Although they're going to send me the Pontus, which I'm excited about. Dynafreps, that is. Oops, I just hit the camera. Anyway, the Dynafreps Aries 2, one of my favorite DACs. Underneath that is probably the Geshelli Labs J2. Awesome. $250 without a USB, $300 with a USB. Then is probably the Schiit Modi Multibit, which you can't really get. That's $250. Then the Schiit Modi regular one. I also like the Topping E50. And then I like this one. This one's okay. I need to do another DAC list. That's probably what I need to do. So, how does the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200 sound? Let's do it this way. How does the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200 sound? Let's find out. If you're getting any value out of this video, consider subscribing and liking the video. If you subscribe and turn on bell notifications, I put up community posts all the time about products that are on sale. So it might be worth subscribing and turning on the bell notifications in case you want to save some money maybe on something. Thank you. All right, before we talk about how it sounds, I actually should have gone through some of like the DAC chip. Okay, so the DAC chip in the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 2, I'm going to say that as many times as I can. DAC Magic 200. Simply because it's the best model name I've heard in a long time. Probably ever. Although Chord does pretty cool stuff with their names too. All right, DAC Magic 200 comes with twin. That means 2, identical. ESS Sabre 9028 QTM chips. That chip is used in a lot of DACs at lower prices. However, there isn't always 2 of them. So I think that's why you get so many digital inputs, because there's 2 chips handling it. I don't know. I could be talking out of my rear end. So the SMSL M500 Mark II, that has a 9038 Pro chip in it. but I only think it's one Pro. I don't think there's two DAC chips. Does it matter? I don't know. And here's a little secret about DACs, at least from my experience. And I've listened to probably, I don't know, more than 20. I know that for sure. Here's the secret. It's not about the DAC chip per se. People will say it's about the implementation. Yes, it is about the implementation. More importantly, it's about the analog output stage and the power supply. If you have a really clean power supply, if you got a really solid output stage, it doesn't matter how old the DAC chip set is, it's still going to sound awesome. And in many cases, better than stuff that has a newer DAC chip. DACs are very difficult to compare. There's a few reasons for that. One is output levels. Even when you're A/Bing two different DACs, if they have even a slight difference in output levels, there can be a significant change in the sound or the perceived sound. So they're difficult. And most decent DACs sound more similar than they sound different. With all that said, I did hear a difference between the M500 Mark II and the DAC Magic 200. The DAC Magic 200. DAC Magic, sorry, I just love it. DAC Magic, okay. Probably getting sick of that. All right, as far as songs, I listen to about 5 to 10 seconds of a song, and then I switched it over to the other DAC and listened to, again, the same 5 to 10 seconds. And I would hone in on maybe one instrument or one portion or one bit of that song. And it was still hard to tell a difference. Still was a difference though. First song, Nirvana, Something in the Way off the MTV Unplugged. At the 35-second mark, his voice is a bit sibilant, or not a bit, a lot sibilant. And it's when he says, it's okay to eat fish. It's okay to eat fish. They don't have any feelings. Not as good as Kurt Cobain, that's for sure. Anyway, the sibilance was way more apparent on the SMSL M500 Mark II than it was on the DAC Magic 200 from Cambridge. Less sibilant. Conversely, though, at the 34-second mark, and I don't know why it was 34 and 35 seconds, it just was, Hello by Adele. There was slightly more air from the M500 Mark II from SMSL, which makes sense. So sibilance and air kind of go hand in hand. They don't always have to. The takeaway here is the SMSL M500 Mark II is more sibilant, has more air than the DAC Magic 200 from Cambridge Audio. All right. Her voice was also slightly warmer and less analytical than the M500 Mark II. Can you tell I wrote these notes and I'm just reading off a computer? It doesn't feel natural, but it's okay. Got Me Wrong by Alice in Chains off the MTV Unplugged. I use those records because they're very well recorded. Also, a sense of space. You can get good imaging or be able to tell apart imaging better on those songs. Anyway, Got Me Wrong at the 20-second mark when he says goes away, there was more airy reverb on the SMSL. So you might be thinking, okay, the SMSL beats this thing in treble. I don't necessarily agree with that. While there is more detail from the SMSL M500 Mark II, that may not be a good thing. And I'll tell you the reason why. Some songs, if they're not recorded perfectly, I think the SMSL is going to push that down the chain. And if you have transparent enough speakers and electronics in the chain, you're going to hear the shortcomings in a lot of recordings. Whereas the DAC Magic M200 is going to play better with more recordings. And you're not going to pick apart the DAC Magic by itself and say that it is not detailed, because I think it is very detailed. I just think it's slightly less detailed than the M500 Mark II, but it also has less sibilance. And I don't like sibilance. I don't think anybody likes sibilance. It's distracting because once you hear it, you can't really unhear it. And it makes sense that the DAC Magic 200 from Cambridge Audio is going to be a bit smoother, maybe a little bit warmer, because if you've heard any of their amplifiers, they have a tendency, and Cambridge Audio is known a bit for a little bit warm, very robust, yummy. That's another thing. The bass on the DAC Magic 200, at this point you're probably getting sick of me saying it. The bass on the Cambridge DAC over here is a little bit fuller, maybe less defined than the SMSL, but it's to my ear, it's more appealing. It is what we're talking, it is, okay. DACs are supposed to take digital music, change it into analog music, right? Digital to analog converter. Detail, perfection isn't always the name of the game. Sometimes it's just to enjoy the music. And I think the DAC Magic 200 does a better job than the SMSL M500 Mark II as far as giving me enjoyable music, or music that sounds more like analog music from my youth. And obviously that's a long time ago, but even analog music from vinyl. Now, I think the Cambridge does a better job. I think it sounds more analog. Yeah, go figure. Listen, I know you can't pin down and define what more analog sounds like. Either it is or it isn't. I think the Cambridge DAC Magic 200 is more analog sounding than the SMSL M500 Mark II. Now, comparing it to the Geshelli Labs J2, which is one of my favorite DACs, I think the Cambridge DAC Magic 200 has more going on in the treble area, more on top, actually is more detailed, has a little bit more clarity than the Geshelli Labs J2. But the Geshelli Labs J2 soundstage is bigger. When I put this on speakers, the Cambridge did a good job. It did a better job than the SMSL M500 Mark II. It wasn't as big or as deep as the Geshelli Labs J2. On headphones, I don't think you're going to tell much of a difference. If anything, I think people are probably going to prefer the DAC Magic 200 over the Geshelli Labs because there is a little bit more detail retrieval there. On speakers, I don't think it's really going to matter. It's going to be up to what you prefer. A lot more features on the DAC Magic 200. You have MQA, you have different roll-offs, you do have a headphone amp in there. And with all those features, I think it is worth $500. I think it's also just refreshing that we have different choices other than the dozens of SMSL DACs, dozens of topping DACs, dozens of, well, I don't know, Loxg, Gustard. There are so many DACs out there, but they all seem to be coming from Chinese manufacturers. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I think a lot of those DACs are fantastic. I think Cambridge Audio is chasing sound rather than the latest tech. Just like Geshelli Labs, just like Skit. I think what they're doing with a chip that maybe is more affordable and what some people would consider to be not as cutting edge as some of the other DAC chips out there, doesn't matter. The way they're handling it with the output stage and their implementation, I think sounds more natural. I think it has a more organic tone to it than some, not all, some of the Chinese DACs out there. I think the topping E50 does a great job. I think that's $250. I don't have that one though, so I did not directly compare it to the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200. But I did compare the Geshelli Labs J2 to the E50, and it was pretty much a wash. And I think this one has a little bit more detail on top. So take that for what it's worth. So I don't think you can go wrong with the DAC Magic. Is it groundbreaking? Is it make me jump out of my chair? No. Did I compare it to the Denafrips Aries 2? I did. While they have a similar tonality, I think the Denafrips is cleaner through the bass. I think it's much cleaner through the top end, and sound stages and images much bigger. But, I mean, that's kind of my benchmark, so I'm not surprised. Very good product. I have no problem recommending this thing. I wish it had a remote, but it doesn't. That's fine. I still think it's worth $500. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have Patreon-only Zooms. We also have a Patreon-only Facebook group and Discord server. You can also use the link in the description to buy the Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200. If you do, and you click through and you buy it, I will get a commission. It doesn't cost you any more though, so it's a great way to support the channel. You can also sign up for Amazon Music or Tidal Music. If you click on those links and sign up, even for a trial, I will get a couple of dollars. So, don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge it, listen through your new Cambridge Audio DAC Magic 200 and fill yourself with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.